Good morning. I make this observation just about every time I go through this section, and it always challenges me. I hope it'll be helpful to you. In Exodus 20 through 24, which we've already touched on, uh, 5 chapters worth of legal and moral foundations. And there's great stuff here. There's the 10 Commandments, which just an unbeatable list of a moral foundations to make law from and to understand the world from. We looked at the shape of slavery. We touched on that a little bit, realizing that they were slaves for generations and had to really change their thinking. Uh, Here we meet eye for an eye. We didn't get into that, but it is here that your retribution is to be balanced. Uh, Care for neighbor. We talked about that quite a bit, and that your neighbor may even be the foreigner in the land, certainly as the widow and orphan. We talked about stealing and restitution as principles, and we talked about the limits of enemy, that you still got to be helpful to people, even if they're your enemy. If you hate them, that doesn't limit your ability to care for them. And then we didn't get into this a lot, but there are three annual festivals that folks are expected to go through. And really, I list 24, but 24, there's no legal things going on. It's God meeting with those 74 and the covenant being ratified. So really, there's 4 chapters of actual legal and moral foundations. Well, the next section, and we tend to skip this because there's just a lot of details in there, right? Are the worship foundations for the nation. One of the first things we find is the Ark of the Covenant. Here's how you make it. Here's its size. Here's what it's composed of. Here's how you put it together. There's the tabernacle itself, that the tent and the courtyard, and then there's the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offerings. There's the lampstands and the table for the bread and all the tools that go with that. You also get into priestly garments. These are what your priests are going to wear. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to be made from. Uh, and then the ordination of priests. Uh, Moses, when you ordain Aaron and his sons as high priests, this is what you're going to do. This is what they're going to do. It's going to take a week. It's, all of these details as Moses is up on the mountain. He's getting, and this is not 4 chapters, this is 7 chapters of these worship foundations. And I always think, oh, the balance is off here. The balance is wrong. Why such detail on the worship foundations where the moral foundations seem to be getting a lot less? There's a lot of other law that could have been generated there. Well, the ark is where God would meet his people. Between those two angels, those two cherubim, God would allow his presence to be felt so that he could communicate with Moses, so he could communicate with his people. And the tabernacle was a halfway house based on heavenly worship. It's still in the world, but it's not of the world. And I say that the colors, the patterns that are built into every curtain, every division, I just all of the stuff that's in there is just so unique. You wouldn't see it anywhere else. When they would go into this courtyard, they'd be surrounded by gold and blue, purple, red, all this amazing stuff. It would just take them out of where they were. I think even more so, this special incense that was always supposed to be burning, representing the prayers of the people going up to the Lord. Smells are so powerful. They can take us back in memory to different times. We can associate them. I remember biology class in high school, And that smell of formaldehyde, as we got the critters out that we were going to dissect, got them out of their sealed containers. Uh, smells just take you right to a place. And the unique smell of this incense that wouldn't be anywhere else would be that presence of the Lord that would come to your memory. And then the high priest represented God to the people and the people to God. Uh, Urim and Thurim, that these decision dice would be there representing. This is how you find out God's will. I'll help you with that as the high priest. And seeing the 12 jewels, gems that represented the 12 tribes would represent to the Lord his people. Um, I think even more than that, the nation's purpose was definitely to be moral, was also to be that nation of priests, to represent to the rest of the world who the true God was. And that was found in worship primarily. How do our lives represent the Lord? Is worship a significant part of our day? Do we set aside significant time to worship the Lord and just be in fellowship with Him, not bring Him a list of prayer requests, just to be with Him and soak in His presence? Through the Holy Spirit, we can do that. May the Lord add His blessing to this reading of His word.